And the week of Steel, with an extra E for entertainment, continues right here on awesomepodcast.com.
Awesome. Just tell people they're awesome and mean it.
Awesome.
Awesome. Awesome.
Did you have an awesome time? Did you drink awesome shooters and listen to awesome music and then just sit around and soak up each other's awesomeness?
Awesome. Awesome.
Awesome.
That was awesome. You guys are awesome.
No.
You're awesome.
No.
You are awesome.
Sir, you are awesome. Seriously.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Welcome to this week's edition of Everything is Awesome. I'm your host, Kev, and this is a show where we sit down and talk to awesome people about awesome things. And first of all, I'm going to apologize if I sound like I'm constantly out of breath during this episode. As those of you that know, I do the show out of what we call the Shedio. And in July, it's a really bad idea to be in a 8x8 room with everything closed up and the sun beating on it all day and tons of computers running in the background. Such a bad idea. I digress, though. This week we're talking to a person who is part of like a common theme of Everything is Awesome, and that's part, I don't want to necessarily say tabletop, even though most of our storytellers are tabletop, but like a storyteller or a part of a storytelling mechanism. I have binge listened to probably almost, I think, half of what they have available so far. And just like every other storyteller we talk to, this is a very good listen. If you're a fan of tabletop, if you're a fan of podcasting in general, A Quest for Magic and Steele is the show to listen to. And better yet, and I have yet to talk to a local podcaster in the same studio yet, but somewhat local to us. Please welcome to the show fellow Philadelphian podcaster David Steele. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. That was hard to sit through. I wanted to jump in and say
yeah, it's I never do I really like, there's no explicit rule that the guest can't jump in while I'm doing the intro, but no guest has jumped in quite yet that I can recall. We've only had one show where we haven't kicked off with me. So the basis of this show kind of stems from Kevin Smith's Fat Man on Batman, the original incarnation of that, where he sat down and talked to people who worked on Batman. And he always gave long-winded intros rather. And that's kind of what I like. A lot of long-form interview shows kind of just start the interview off like without anyone really doing anything. Like it's just a straight talk, and then they cut like a pre-intro. I tend to do an intro, a pre-intro later, and just like I like to talk a lot. Basically, is what happens. I couldn't tell. Yeah. But you know what? I love when, and we'll see what happens with this episode, but a lot of times, especially guys like you who play D&D or whatever tabletop game, right. They tend to match me in talking, because it's just kind of the nature of that mechanism or that game or whatever, that hobby. Right. Big gabby mouths and hams. Yeah, and so and what's great, and we'll talk about this later at some point in the show, but I want to get it out now in case this does split up in two episodes. As I mentioned in that little intro, is that you're a local guy to me, and I'm in the suburbs. I'm in Levittown. Right. But in the greater Philadelphia area, we're part of the same community of podcasters, and in about, I don't know when this is exactly dropping, but within the next week or two, from when this airs, we'll both be at the Philadelphia Podcast Festival. We got to talk about that a little bit.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Looking forward to that.
Oh yeah, so we'll talk about that maybe more in depth later. But yeah, I think you're what, August 20th, right?
Yeah, I'll be at Amalgam Comics, and you're going to be at Tattooed Mom, right?
Yes, I'm going to be at Tattooed Mom August 21st. So you can see both shows and not have a conflict of interest.
There you go.
You guys, what time are you guys on 8/20?
4 p.m. on Saturday the 20th.
4 p.m. We're on Sunday the 21st, 2 p.m. You know what I love? I love that you guys follow Party of One, and Jeff Stormer and I are I've been on his podcast, he's been on mine. We've talked here and there, so I'm really excited to go check out Saturday's events, because it's going to be a lot of tabletop, a lot of nerd at least.
Yeah, that's cool too, because I think I did hear about him on your show, and that's how I went and checked out his show. That's kind of neat how that works.
Oh, that's great. I love that. I love it because when another good friend of mine that I've met through podcasting is the guy who was at this point on about a month ago, but for you and I, his last episode dropped today, or yesterday, dropped yesterday. And that's Jason Ashley from Too Cool for Tabletop.
Right.
And he was on Party of One, and that's how I found out about him. And
that's the show I heard about. Yeah.
Outside, both those guys are great. Personally and like in what they do. Like, I love that one shot format, and that's what originally turned me on to not only Jeff but to Jason, because he started off Too Cool for Tabletop doing one shot adventures, and then it turned into a campaign, which I've grown to like. That's kind of my, like, the only one shot podcast I listen to now is Jeff. Everything else is more like your show and like Jason's show, where it's campaign oriented
format. Yeah.
And you know what, the benefit of that is you can fall in love with the characters,
no doubt. Yeah.
So let's get into let's start off with your origin. And it's weird because I don't know where to start with you, because usually when I'm talking to a tabletop guy, they're the DM or whatever, but you kind of play host of the podcast,
right,
yet you're a player instead of the DM. So is your thing more like podcasting, broadcasting, and you got into D&D later, or have you been a tabletop fan for life?
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to remember that word origin, but before I get too far, I have to do this. I've been holding this in all day long. You ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of a team. I always think of that when I hear your show.
Yeah, well, and of course, that is, I stole that.
I mean, yeah. That's a great movie. It's a great movie. Lego movie.
It is a great movie. And so the original concept for this show was something stupid like Crude Humor Studios Presents,
right,
which is our production company. And it was going to be me focusing on podcasting. And I think I came up with this idea like 2 years ago. Or probably 3 years ago at this point. And I just thought to myself, there's no way I can pull in podcasters to keep this show going beyond maybe 4 episodes. So I need to broaden my horizons, and something with that movie and just kind of including everything, like down to like, eventually I would love to have my buddy that lives down south on the show, just because I think we could have an interesting conversation about Southern culture. I was like, everything is kind of awesome. Let's go with that route. Let's snag that from the movie. And originally I was planning on doing live shows with that song kicking on at the end of my initial intro. But me and my buddy without spoiling anything, and I've already made this reveal, I'm going to have like a kind of a co-host for the live version of the show. And
that's going to be at the Philly pod?
Yes. Oh yeah, the Philly pot. And you know what? And I'm going on July 25th. So if you're listening to this now, in the past, I've gone and checked out Tattooed Mom to see what it's like, because I used to wrestle, so I come from like a showmanship background. But looking at pictures of past Podcast Fest and Tattooed Mom, I think I'm way overthinking this process. But we'll see. But yeah, let's get back to you.
Yeah.
After that nice rendition.
It's a cool spot. I went there, I guess, I don't know, they had a get together. That's where I first met these guys.
Yeah, I know. That was something where I have 2 kids. And so weekends are usually reserved for like family time.
No doubt.
And we do, especially in the summer, because my fiance is a teacher, so she's off. So usually, she spreads some stuff out during the week, but we pack a lot in on the weekend because A, I'm off, and B, she needs to like get away from just having kids around her all day long.
Sure, no doubt.
So, but yeah, I told her, I was like, listen, at least that first weekend in August, or that first podcast festival weekend in August, it's like I'm gonna be in the city a lot.
Cool.
So, but yeah, so let's chat about your origin.
All right. Yeah. So I thought about this too because it could be a long story or a short and sweet. So I think I'll just kind of give you the basic long story. I have 5 kids myself, so we'll back up.
Oh.
They're all older, so it's a little different scenario, I guess, than what you got going on.
I got a 4.5-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Yeah, right. So I know those days. My youngest is 15. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah, my kids are a little older right now.
I would not think that if you just listening to you, on both your podcast and now, if you said I have 5 kids, I'd say what? That's got to be a lot of twins or something.
Yeah.
Or B, like I would say maybe at most like I would say maybe 8 or 9.
Yes.
Wow.
Nunu popped out the kids pretty quickly when he was younger.
Okay. So what's that? What's to deviate as we do on this show?
Okay.
What's it like to live? Is it hectic having 5 kids?
No.
It's gotta be.
No, not really. It's not because they're real well-raised kids, and they're real close in age. Most of them are about a year apart. We kind of had them quickly. The oldest is like 22, and then 21, and then the next one's 18,
holy God,
17. Yeah. So and well, plus 4 girls are the oldest, so that makes it a little easier too, I guess. And then
really,
this is a boy. Yeah. So
I feel like if my oldest was a girl, I would have lost my shit.
But it's been cool. Yeah, I guess it matters for everybody. There's different scenarios for boy first or girl first. Yeah. But it's awesome. Like my oldest, she's like, we call her the little mommy. She just took up the role and was like the little mommy basically as the other ones were growing up. And
oh wow,
it was cool. It was neat. It was neat seeing them, and they grew up close. The first 2 were real close in age. They're close. The next 2 are close in age. So it's neat. It was a good.
Yeah, that's kind of our game plan. Is we had these 2 that are relatively close to one another, and then we're waiting purposely to be able to afford life. And then we kind of want to have 2 more that are about a year to 2.5 years apart from one another, so that like they basically always have a little play buddy, and we don't always have to be their focus.
Yeah, and it does work out that way, so it's cool. It's neat.
Now that my daughter's like a kid and like wants to play and stuff, every now and then they still want to just be with either me or with my fiance, but we can easily say, just go play with your brother or sister. And like, they do it. And like, we can get shit done around the house now.
No doubt. I remember when they were younger too. We had Barney was big, and I remember, man, my first 2, they loved Barney. They'd sit in front of that Barney watching him for hours.
I feel bad for you because thank God the worst I have it is my daughter likes Caillou.
I wouldn't let him watch that one.
That's my line. Like one time I think they saw on Netflix the picture of Barney, and my son was like, "What's that?" I'm like, "That's a bad show. Like, we're not gonna watch that." Like, and now what's great about him, he's at the age where like I can be like, "You see Batman? It's a cartoon Batman. We can watch that if you want." I mean, so like him and I, we can watch shows that I actually enjoy with him now. Right. And then my daughter kind of gets the shitty end of the stick because usually if she's awake, he's awake, and he will usually let him trump because she really doesn't have a say. But every now and then she does, and it's Caillou.
Oh man, yeah, the Caillou, the little whiner. I'm like, no, my kids hate him. I'm like,
that's what everyone says. I don't know why my daughter loves him, but she does, and she's not necessarily a whiner. She's a special kind of girl. They all are. She has a strong personality. Like I can foresee, I can foresee us butting heads a lot.
Oh boy.
So, and you know what? Here's one of these conversations that I love. I had no idea that you had kids, and I've had a few conversations that I think one of them got lost to a bad file, but these conversations where we just talk parenthood. I actually kind of dig that. That's how I know I'm getting older. Is right. That I dig talking about parenthood. Anyway.
Yeah, it's funny too. It's if you think about parenthood too, like you tell people, before they have kids, what it's like in the world. And they're like, oh yeah, they try to empathize, but you can't really until you have kids. It changes your whole world, your whole outlook.
And I was that guy, probably about 4 or 5, we'll say probably 5-6 years ago, where I said, I'll wait until I'm in my mid to late 30s to have kids. Cause like, I really only want one, and I don't want to deal with kids. I wasn't really a fan of kids. And then oopsie, the first one happens, and, I fell in love instantly. Like as soon as like we saw the heartbeat or heard the heartbeat or whatever, like from that moment forward, I was like, dude, I love kids. Like I want to have as many kids as possible. Right. And that quickly turned into 4, like is my limit, I think. Bearing something that happens in the future where the next 2 are super easy. But I just turned 32 at the date of this recording. Yesterday I turned 32.
Oh, happy birthday.
So, thank you. So like I'm so glad that I had the kids when I did, because like I can only imagine starting out 3 years from now, and I would just be dead. Like I'd be tired all the time. Like I'm tired now because of them. I can only imagine being older.
Right. Yeah.
So origin story time.
Okay.
To get back on track.
Yeah, that's cool. So I've always been a ham. I guess that's where it all starts. Was in choir in high school and musicals, was in a few different bands. Started I went to school in the 80s, late 80s, got into dancing as well, did some break dancing, hip hop, popping and locking stuff. So I kind of had a well-rounded life coming up. Got into martial arts when I was 14. So just a ham, just love being out there doing things, and love the theater. So had kids, worked a lot, kind of pushing it forward. Got into DJing as well. So I had an audio background. Coming from the bands, I had like a big PA system, and friends and family would ask me to DJ. So I ended up going mobile, became a DJ, did that for many years, wedding DJ, parties. So I had all that audio equipment, and then I got into doing voiceover. I ended up taking a course with, it's a cool, give them a name drop. It's Gravy for the Brain. They offered, it was actually through, Living Social or Groupon.
Yeah.
One of those things. I said it was a voiceover thing. I said, wow, you know what? I love doing voiceover. I'm a ham. I love being behind the mic. I love hearing my own voice. And I said,
I can feel that.
Right? I said, let me try this out. So I took the course, loved it. I told the wife, I said, you know what? That little closet down there with all those piles of clothes in it, I'm going to make that into a studio. So that's what I did. Made a little studio for about a year, did some voiceover work. There's some websites we can join, pay for, and then they kind of give you the jobs. You get job listings, and you can go and audition. Found out about Amazon owns Audible, the narration, so you can do book narration. So I ended up doing that. I said, you know what? I love reading. I used to always read to the kids and do the voices. So I said, well, let me do that. So that was that progression. So I've narrated a few books under my belt so far. I still have a couple that I'm working on right now currently. Enjoy it. I just enjoy it. I have a passion for it. I love hearing the product. I love making things come to life. So that's kind of where my headset was. As far as the D&D podcast, to bring it to that, so I travel a lot with my work. I'm always on the road. So I ended up, I hate regular radio. Matter of fact, I heard you talking. It was cool. Listening to your show, hearing you talk about local radio stations I've never heard, because you're the only guy, I guess, local that I really listen to.
Okay.
You said like 104.5. I was like, hey, cool. I know that station. That's right. He's local. Isn't he?
That's great. You know what? Aside from, I think you're the first one I've actually talked to that's listened to my show ahead of the interview. Most guys, just like me, usually D&D podcasts I tend to listen to up front because it's a storytelling aspect.
Yeah.
Other podcasts that aren't necessarily storytelling, they're just whatever. Like sometimes I like to go into an interview cold turkey. For you, the most I did was listen to, I guess, 8 episodes if you include the bonus episode where you guys talk about your characters.
Yeah, cool.
So I listened to that, and that's because I ran out of time to listen to anything else.
Yeah.
But I love this is finding these new podcasts through whether it be the Philadelphia Podcasting Society or Reddit or the podcast groups on Facebook and Twitter and Potter and Family and all that.
Right.
I love finding all these new podcasts because usually it makes me fall behind on everything, but I always find a new podcast to kind of binge, and you guys have been the most recent one.
Nice. Well, I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah. And I don't know where that tangent came from. Oh, yeah. So, I was always a huge fan of local radio, but more so the talky stuff.
So I speaking of local radio, so I hate commercials. Hated them. Always hate them. It's like a waste of my time and energy. And I was always flipping stations.
Yep.
I ended up finding 88.5. Are you familiar with XPN?
Oh, you know what? Recently, I've never listened to them, but I think 25 o'clock has had a couple guys from there on.
Man, XPN, they're out at their University of Pennsylvania is where their studios are. And I guess they're national, but they're public radio, basically. They have a fundraiser a couple times a year, just like PBS stations. I love the station. There's a lot of it's all stuff that you don't hear on the regular radio. Singer-songwriters, eclectic music, a lot of local people, up and coming. It's spectacular. They have the World Cafe they do, which is like a live lunchtime thing. New music you hear. And there's a lot of times there's some junky radio on there. They play everything. From country to they don't play classical, but country to hillbilly stuff to R&B. It's just a big mix, and I love that because I'm eclectic in that sense. I love all types of music. So that really hooks me. What was I talking about? Yeah, so local stuff, music, and being on the road, I ended up finding podcasts, and I don't know how it first started. I was thinking about this, thinking you might ask about this. Yeah. And I know one of the first ones I listened to was the Joe Rogan Experience. Love him, 3-hour-long shows. It's hard to, but traveling a lot, sometimes I would listen to a whole show, right through. Love UFC, love fighting, being in the martial arts. I love watching the fights. I don't hardly ever miss any of the big matches. And so I listen to his show, enjoy it. He's a smart guy, got a lot of cool stuff that he does, and I'm amazed that I didn't know he was that well-rounded as far as his knowledge, and he has cool guests on there. So that's how I started with that. Then I'm searching. I'm like, how's this stupid podcast thing work? I've always had an iPhone, and I never knew about it. I'm like, oh, cool. These are free? Wow, this is neat. So I started searching and ended up finding D&D stuff. I don't know. I was looking for gaming. So I ended up finding one of the other first ones was a gaming one because I enjoy gaming as well. My kids are all into gaming. Brought them up right. You know what I mean?
My son, he is showing some interest in that new Pokemon Go, which I grew up, I kind of came up with Pokemon. I remember Pokemon Blue and Red.
Gotta catch them all.
Yep. And he'll every now and then want to watch the show on Netflix.
Right.
Which that doesn't really hold up for me. I watched it with him. There's a reason I watched this when I was a kid.
Yeah, no doubt.
But the game, when the original Game Boy games came available for the Virtual Console on Game Boy 3DS or whatever it's called, I instantly bought it. I played it for a day, but I bought it and played it, and then I downloaded the app on my phone when Pokemon Go came out because someone told me about it. I'm like, Pokemon, this can't be good. And once I got through the initial server crashes and was able to actually sit there and play, it is totally a time waster, but you can get into it. And it's a game that I'll when I can go for a walk with my son and play it, it will be fun to do. I think
that is kind of cool. Yeah. From what I hear, people are out walking.
Yeah. And you know, what's really good about it. And a lot of people have done the research for me because I'm lazy. But it seemingly is not only bringing a lot of people together, but I've read at least 2 or 3 articles where kids with autism who have trouble speaking to others, like are socializing and talking to other people while they're playing this game. So like it's, a lot of people are judging, whether they're, older teenagers or adults or whatever. And I can, whatever, like I've been judged my whole life, whether it be for comic books or wrestling or Pokemon, like whatever, like you can judge me. I'm at 32. I'm over it. Like I can deal with it.
Over it.
Yeah, like you can say it and I'll just whatever, toss it to the side.
Yeah.
But the fact that like you can see like someone who for 20 years has been so antisocial, or their autism affects them in whatever way, it makes them come out of their shell and like brings tears to their parents' face because like they're doing something that they've never done before.
Yeah.
That's just such a wonderful story. And
yeah.
So,
you get tears in your. I'm such a pushover now, especially now I'm older. I cry at a drop of a hat. Like I hear a sad story. I'm like,
I cried at the Muppets.
Yeah.
So I'm the same way. I'm in the last 5 years, I've become a real crier, right. and those articles don't necessarily bring tears to my eyes, but I can appreciate them. I need to see, for me, I need to visually see the emotional point. So whether it's a movie or even in real, like if it's a like honest to God like moment that I see, I'll start crying.
Yeah, and I'm like, if I hear, matter of fact, just like yesterday, I forget what it was, but I'll hear a story on the news or even a podcast I'm listening to, and if it touches me, and I can imagine, put myself there.
Yes.
That's the kind of like, even reading books, I love reading, and I could easily just become part of put myself there, and that's it was easy for me to go into that world and just kind of imagine, and I would just ultimately the empathy, it was like I would feel it. It was like, so I hear these stories in the news where I'm like, I just start crying. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, you know what? Now that you say that, like at least with podcasts, there have been a couple podcasts that like there's been a really emotional story and it brought me to tears. Probably a book.
Admit it.
I won't admit it. I won't admit a book brought me to tears, but some guy talking. Yeah. So my kids, I'm trying to show my kids the proper way through video games. I'm actually really excited for this, that the Nintendo, the re-releasing like the small mini Nintendo.
That looks cool.
I'm excited for that so that like I can hook that up and like, listen, that Wii U we have, that Xbox we have, you can't touch that anymore. Like this is what you're going to start out the way I started out. And by the time they release the Super Nintendo, you'll be ready to play the Super Nintendo, and they'll eventually release it all. And I'm going to teach my kid that 8-bit is the way to go, because that's like, I'm a sucker for 8-bit. Like if there's something that, I'll play an 8-bit video game, whether it's a re-release or a brand new, just like, hey, we're going to design this retro. I'll play that before any new game.
Really?
Yeah. One of the most, I say most recent, and it's not recent, but Final Fantasy IV After Years was released on Wii Virtual Console or whatever a couple of years ago, and like that was I had that along with like whatever the new game was at the time, Left 4 Dead maybe, and I always opted to play Final Fantasy IV After Years because like it's Final Fantasy is kind of like it's Final Fantasy, and especially Final Fantasy IV was like one of the first ones I ever played. So like it had an emotional attachment too, but I dig old school video games, and I'd rather go back and play. And I think that's because like now I don't have as much time to play, so I don't want to play something overly complicated.
Yeah, you're very selective, and you like to jump in and just have enjoyment and move on.
Some of my favorite, and this probably goes with the storytelling thing, some of my favorite games are the Telltale games. Specifically, the Walking Dead ones are so good.
Oh my gosh.
I'm way behind. Well, not way behind. I'm behind like the Michonne series. I haven't played yet.
Right.
So I want to play that. But like even the Back to the Future ones were good.
Are they? I haven't played them yet.
Yeah. You know what? That's what sold me. Like I don't think I played Walking Dead before I played Back to the Future, and I bought Back to the Future and Jurassic Park at the same time. Jurassic Park is okay, but it's not like Back to the Future feels like almost like Back to the Future 4. Like it feels like it should be the sequel to the movie.
Huh.
And it's done really well. The kid that they got to the voice Marty McFly is so point on. And eventually Michael J. Fox comes in and plays like relatives of Marty McFly.
Cool.
So they do bring him in, I think, in like the last episode or two of the series.
Excellent.
But that's what sold me on Telltale. I'm like, this is storytelling. Like the graphics aren't up to par to what some of these other games are, but I'm a storytelling guy. So as long as the story is good, I'll let things slip.
Right.
And it's probably better than The Walking Dead season 2.
Uh-huh.
I don't think anything really in that Telltale world touches Walking Dead season 1. But it's probably the second best. Back to the Future is probably the second best thing they've done.
I'll have to check it out. I've only played the Walking Dead 1 and 2. And Telltale, because I played their original stuff back in the day, and I remember liking the cartoonish style of it. And I even forget the names of them. What the heck were they? Jake and there was like a rabbit.
Yeah, Jake. I never played it when I was a kid, but I only know it because they've done it since.
Yeah, and I remember them being glitchy though. I didn't really get a lot of joy out of those. And the way they've done their new, I guess, revamping, excellent. Yeah, real quality. And
they also they are in the same vein of like, it reminds me of Monkey Island and some of those classic Sierra games.
Yeah, Sierra.
So I really like they're my favorites. Like even because they're not really games. Like it's literally you're pointing and clicking, but they are.
You're driving the story along by doing it.
Yeah,
You're in
it's so much fun to play. I'd rather play that than any kind of Call of Duty or anything like any kind of Call of Duty is really the only first person shooter I play. But
I was going to say that's sacrilege. Watch it.
No, I'll say it. I will go on record that the storytelling is so well done in those Telltale games that I would probably always pick that over, any kind of first person shooter.
Sure. Especially you're a little older, you got kids. That's definitely more up your alley at this point.
Yeah, and I have a ton of Skyrim. I've played for a total of 3 minutes.
I love Skyrim. Don't even start me.
It's sitting in my to play pile, and I have the Xbox One. I have the only new system I don't have is PS4. Why I have them, I don't know. I literally play 5 minutes a month because if I'm not doing family stuff, I tend to opt towards doing this and putting a lot of time into podcasting and. Right. We're not really doing it right now, but I love. I want to be I want to be a Kevin Smith. I want to do storytelling. I don't want to say writing or directing, but telling stories in whatever medium. And so I put a lot of time into that. So video games are really a once a month thing for me. Are you
thinking about making a separate podcast where you just sit down and tell some stories?
Oh, dude, it's been the dream to do a radio play on a podcast. Yeah, that's been something. I've been podcasting for 10 years, since 2006.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
shut up.
Yep. I got into podcasting. So, okay. I'll give the short version because people on that listen to the show know it already. But the short version is as a teenager in high school in the early 2000s, late 90s, 94.1 was, I don't know if you remember this, they did a thing where hey, enter a contest to be a DJ. And I want to say it was 99.
You mean YSP 94, like the rock?
Yeah, YSP. So this is going on 17 years ago, probably. Me and my buddy were like, let's do it. Let's totally do it. And we never did it. We never made a mixtape or anything to send into them, a demo or anything to be DJs. But fast forward to 7 years later in 2006, so I was listening to, I think, Smodcast. It was, for me, the only podcast I knew about at the time. And I only knew about it because I was a Kevin Smith fan. And then a buddy of mine was like, I think I was wrestling at the time too, and I think
high school wrestling. What do you mean?
No, WWE wrestling. I used to.
Wrestling.
Yeah,
wow.
I started off in the backyard, and we eventually got a license from the state of Pennsylvania and put on legit shows around the Levittown area.
Look at you.
Yeah, it was. I as I'm staring at my Shedio, I have one of my masks hanging up.
What was your name?
So okay, this is our connection. I was hoping this would come up. This is our connection.
Man of Steel. Come on.
That was a nickname in the backyard, probably.
Okay.
Because as my character hailed from the city of Steel, and he was named Steel Tip.
No.
Yes. And that's what you guys, when you guys first started posting in the podcast society, and I kind of noticed when we started communicating on Twitter, like the name like started jumping out at me more and more and more. And I was like, oh my God, Steel. I was like, I haven't like used Steel Tip in forever. Like, so my Twitter handle at HHWST is my original podcast from 10 years ago was Happy Hour with Steel Tip.
Oh my God. Steel Tip.
Yes. And
what was the point with the tip? I'm scared to ask.
It was not that I wore, and this was dumb, I wore Steel Tip boots.
Wow. I bet your opponents like that.
And eventually it turned into I would wear regular boots and like I got wrestling boots, which are sitting next to me right now, and they just have silver tips now.
How do they smell sitting next to you right now?
No, you know what? I got them, and I probably only wore them for maybe 4 or 5 matches.
Okay.
Before I broke my ankle and kind of.
Ouch.
I only wrestled one more time after I broke my ankle, and have had the itch ever since.
Oh, sure.
I always threaten to get in shape and do it again one day, but it probably won't happen. But yeah, no, and like hearing about how your I guess podcast network Steel Empire,
the Steel Empire.
Yeah. Is that what it is? Steel Empire? Yeah, because your Twitter's Empire Steel.
That's right. Yeah, we couldn't get Steel Empire. Yeah. We had to switch it.
Yeah. So, and like, I was like, oh my God, like there's similarities. I was like, because I'm like my network so in the course of me doing podcasting, at one point, like we had 5 to 7 shows that were part of this network, and it was the Happy Hour with Steel Tip Network, but we just called it HHWST.net Radio Network or Podcast Network or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, I love it. I love the Steel. Like it's just good memories for me.
Nice. How about, speaking of wrestling, did you see that movie, The Wrestler?
Oh yeah.
Great,
yeah.
Right?
It was great. That's, I would it's probably a top 15 movie for me.
Yeah. Excellent movie.
Yeah, but it is an excellent movie, and I would say before all these awesome comic book movies that have come out, it was probably a top 5 movie for me at some point.
You know, another one too that jumps out, and that's, I don't know why, in that same genre, kind of a creeper or sleeper, like movie that you really weren't sure about, wasn't a big blockbuster thing, was Clint Eastwood's one of his last ones, Gran Torino or something. Did you see that?
No, I did not see it, but it was something I did want to see it.
To see that. It's such a, I've watched it like 20 times. It's crazy good.
Yeah, that was, when I saw it, it was one that I wanted to see.
And I don't know. You see the previews; it doesn't look like anything, but I ended up getting a copy. I was like, it's crazy good.
Yeah, these days I always opt for the superhero movie. Though I'll tell you what.
Oh, they've been great.
Yeah, I haven't seen Man of Steel. No, I saw Man of Steel, unfortunately. Batman versus Superman. I didn't see that, which is hard for me to do because like. I'm a huge Ben Affleck fan. So not only do you cast Ben Affleck as Batman, it's Batman. Like I'm a huge Batman fan. Yeah. So they just marketed that movie poorly from what I hear on the 19th of July. So for people listening now, you've already watched it. For me, it will be in a couple days. I'll watch it. From what I've heard, the Blu-ray, the unrated one, is actually really good. They said they added about 30 minutes or so of added features. Let me stop and tell you though, I'm not a crazy fanatic about anything. Like I said, I'm kind of eclectic in all of my passions. I love a lot of different things, but I don't get crazy about anything. Like some people get nuts about
certain thing like the superheroes. I love them all. I enjoy all the movies. I mean, some of the older ones are kind of crappily made. It's sad, but the newer ones have been great. And this Batman versus Superman, heard a lot of bad stuff about it. Oh, it sucked. I enjoyed it. I went to the theater. I had a great time. Ben, I thought, did well. It was fun, entertaining. I mean, you could pick it apart, but I don't go for that reason. I go to be to go into the world and enjoy the fun of it. And it was an entertaining show, a movie. So.
Well, and I did hear that Ben was the best part of the movie. And absolutely, comic book movies are 100%. To like just have a good time. There's some that stand out as top tier amazing flicks.
Yeah, where they go beyond just comic book heroes.
Like to me, one of the most recent ones, and it's weird. Deadpool is one of those. Like I think that it transcended its genre.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, it was so and my fear is Deadpool 2 is gonna like just flop because I don't know if you can repeat that success, but
right.
I just hope that I think if the studio doesn't get in the way, I think between Ryan Reynolds and Tim Miller, the director, I think they can pull it off. But if the studio gets in the way, it's going to fail.
I think either way, it's never going to meet the first one.
Oh, no.
The first one just took you off your seat. You're like, whoa, what is this? This is crazy. This is awesome. The second one, it will be good, but there's no way it could hit that same. No.
I mean, I know it's a good superhero movie when my fiance is like, I really enjoyed it. Like, and so far out of all the superhero movies we've seen together, there's two that she's really, really enjoyed. And that's Deadpool and First Class, X-Men First Class.
Okay.
All the other ones to her are just silly, stupid movies.
Which one was First Class? I forget. So many.
That was the first one with, James McAvoy as Professor X and Fassbender as Magneto.
Love him. Yeah, love that.
Yeah. And it was really like it brought X-Men back to like, man, this is good. This is X-Men. This is really good. And it was probably as good as the original X-Men, which to me, a lot of people say doesn't hold up, but like I've watched it recently and like to me it holds up. Like that was the first modern day comic book movie. Like I saw that movie, I think it came out in 99, and I remember walking, I don't know how familiar you are with the burbs of Philly, but I remember walking to the Oxford Valley Mall and watching that movie 10 times. Like I would walk there. Yeah. And that's like Days of Future Past, which wasn't as good as First Class, but that movie was special to me because it brought back Patrick Stewart and all of them, Ian McKellen, and just all the original X-Men came back. And it was just such the only moment in comic book movie history thus far that has been greater for me is Civil War. And the short story, because I've told this already, is that I gave up comics in high school like most people usually do. Well, at least back then you did. In my early 20s, I picked up a comic book, and two of the first comics I started reading in my early 20s was The Walking Dead and Marvel. And Marvel is doing, to me, what was radically new, a huge crossover event. Had no idea that it was going to be a yearly thing. But at the time, it was Civil War. And like, to the point where like I fell in love with Captain America. Like I never liked Captain America before. Right. And I got his, like, that storyline made me get a Captain America shield tattoo on my arm.
Oh,
yeah. Like I
committed.
Yeah, like I mean, he had to die for me to appreciate him. But like Ed Brubaker just was a genius writer, and develop, when he created the Winter Soldier, which to me is one of the best comic book villains and heroes or anti-heroes or whatever that in our modern day. And
help me out because I'm only familiar with the movie. Is it accurate? The Winter Soldier, like they
did a pretty good job with it. Like they are treating him pretty good to the comic book. The Civil War movie was not as good as the original Civil War storyline from about 10 years ago. But that's because you also don't like X-Men were part of that comic book. Marvel doesn't have the rights to X-Men. So you can't do it its true justice, but where if you've seen the Winter Soldier movie, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Civil War, and you've seen Civil War?
Yes.
Yeah. To me, Civil War is the best Avengers movie to date, but not the best Captain America movie. Winter Soldier is the best Captain America movie to date.
Yeah. Sure.
And probably the best Marvel movie. It's not a comic book movie. It's just a really well done.
Yeah.
That's one of the ones that stand out on its own. It's just a really well done movie that happens to star a guy in a costume.
You know what? One of the ones that left me with an impression. I don't know why, but I think it was the Iron Man 3. I think that's the one. It was kind of emotional. Yeah. I don't know why. I remember feeling like, wow, it really touched me personally. I thought it was a little more humanized, I guess.
Yeah. He's out of the suit the whole movie. Almost.
Yeah. Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah. It definitely is. That's a top tier one in my opinion. Have you seen Daredevil, the Netflix series?
No. The only thing I saw was the Ben Affleck movie. I haven't watched. I'm turned off by a lot of the TV shows. I've watched a few superhero shows, and I'm just like, I'm like turned off.
I would, if you have Netflix, watch Daredevil.
Yeah,
it is. I think Daredevil season 1 to date is the best Marvel produced product out there.
Wow. That's heavy praise.
It is.
You gonna back that up?
I'm backing it up.
Right.
I'm sure you can find some flaws with it, but it's just so good. And you start off watching it, and like he's not in the costume for most of the series, but they make it work. Like it is so good. It's there. Season 1 to me, I don't think it had maybe out of 13 episodes, one not so great episode, but even that not so great episode was good.
Sure.
And in season 2, not as good as season 1, but the Punisher stuff. Oh God.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah. Oh my God. And that's not spoiling anything for season 1 or anything, but they brought the Punisher back into the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the Daredevil television show.
Cool.
It's the Netflix stuff. Even Jessica Jones, even that's good. It's not. I'll say this. I think. Well, now I'll say Kilgrave, who is the villain in Jessica Jones, is the second best villain in the Marvel Cinematic history.
Dropping a lot of big things here.
Well, and I would have said
we're gonna
best.
break this down.
I would have said best villain before Civil War, but I think Baron Zemo in Civil War, the way they treated that villain is like you actually felt like you actually know why, you understand why he did what he did.
Right. Like you almost feel bad for him.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for that reason, I think he's probably the best villain Marvel's produced. Yeah, but
I got to tell you, as far as the Civil War movie, I got really frustrated during the movie. I became too engrossed with the reality of it, like the storyline. I was like getting mad because I'm like, just tell them. It's like there should have been no Civil War. It's like, just stop, sit down, have a cup of coffee, and explain what you're doing, and then there won't be any issues. Everybody will back up each other, but then there'd be no movie.
Yeah. That's I think a lot of it, I would say, save for probably Winter Soldier, there's a lot of the comic book movies where you can easily explain away the movie with one plot line that you could throw in there and it explains it away. Yeah. But I think that villain was just really well thought out. And you feel for him. And I'm a sucker for a villain that like you feel for. Like I love that in storytelling. And
again, it becomes empathy. You can almost put yourself in that situation. Hey, if that was me in that experience, maybe I would do the same thing.
I that's exactly the thing. I was like, I would probably, I would, I don't know if I would do the same thing, but I would definitely feel that way.
You can see it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can see where he's coming from.
But the Jessica Jones villain, Kilgrave, played by David Tennant, the great David Tennant.
Oh, yeah.
He
did the Doctor Who, right? David Tennant?
Yes.
I remember him from the Harry Potter series.
Yeah. And you know what? I watched the Harry Potter series. Did not remember him from Harry Potter when I watched.
You're not a fan of Harry Potter then, if you don't remember him.
I mean, Harry Potter, I'll go back and rewatch one day. Lord of the Rings, never watching again. Not that it makes a bad movie. I'm just never watching Lord of the Rings again.
Yeah, it's one of those epic things where you really don't have to go back and watch it. Yeah, it's not like a replayable thing. I agree. I understand that.
No, Harry Potter to me is something that like I can at least movie 3 on. I can definitely foresee myself sitting down and watching on my own again.
Yeah, and you'll get more stuff out of it too the more you watch it.
Yeah. But no, I was first introduced to David Tennant through Doctor Who, and I'm a relatively new Who fan. Like I started, it took me like almost a year to get into it.
Sorry. Yeah.
It took me a year to get into the series that they brought back in 2005. I started watching it whatever the first year Matt Smith took over.
When you start watching any Doctor Who, you're like, what?
The first episode with Chris Eccleston, I was like, what is it? This is boring. I don't understand it. And it took me till the second time I eventually got into Doctor Who.
Yeah, it's got to grow on you for sure.
And then the second time I watched it's not the pilot, but the first episode with Chris, I was like, this is a good episode. Like I get it now. Like I understand why this is a good episode. And but yeah, Tennant I'm a huge fan of, and he kills it in Jessica Jones. Like his villain, I think, is the second best villain in Marvel cinematic history at this point.
Wow, high praise.
High praise. Yep, high praise. And I will back. I defy you to find me a villain. The only villain you'll find better than him, I think, is Baron Zemo. I will allow an argument for Wilson Fisk and Daredevil, but I don't think I think that's just on the fence kind of deal. Like I think you could go either way with those two, but in my opinion, Kilgrave wins it, and I will back up that Daredevil season 1 is the best produced Marvel stuff. And I have not seen Ant-Man, and I've heard that's really good.
TV show or the movie?
The movie Ant-Man. I have not seen Ant-Man with Paul Rudd.
Yeah, that's one of those things too. Like I didn't go to the theater to see that. I'm like, Ant-Man. Who cares about Ant-Man? I remember him in the cartoons. Like nobody cares about Ant-Man. And then the movie was actually really entertaining. I watched it at home. I was like, that's pretty damn good.
And he sold me a ticket to watch it in Civil War. I'm like,
please, he's great in that.
Yeah. I think him and Spider-Man. I think.
Oh my God! Don't get me started on Spidey Kid.
Best fucking Spider-Man that we've had.
Yeah, old school. I mean, I remember watching the cartoon. I mean, I'm old enough to know.
The 90s
old school,
cartoon.
Young Peter Parker. I was like, Yeah.
Yes. Maguire was a good Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Andrew Garfield.
Yep.
Andrew Garfield was a good Spider-Man. Like he had that wit. Like for me, and I'm assuming you're talking about the 90s cartoon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So for me, that's Spider-Man. When I read a Spider-Man comic book, that's the voice I hear. That's the wit I hear when I read it.
Right.
And Andrew Garfield brought that to Spider-Man. But he was a piss poor Peter Parker.
Totally.
What's Tom Holland is the kid's name? I think.
Yeah, I don't know.
But the kid I think his first name's Tom. Tommy, the kid playing Spider-Man now, fantastic. He is got it all. And the fact that he could interact with the MCU now makes him that much better. Like that scene with him and Robert Downey Jr.
No, wait, back up. Interact with the MCU.
Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Wow. I'd see that's over my head.
Yep. There's a lot of acronyms in comic books. I am you know what's funny is like so I'm a nerd compared to you based off that.
Absolutely.
But like there's I consider myself a pop culture nerd. Like I know a lot of things, but I don't know them all really well. Like so like there's I forget who I was talking to. I was talking to I forget.
What is he? Jack of all trade, master of none.
Yeah, yep, exactly. That's how I am with pop culture, like and all this nerdy stuff. Like I know a little bit about everything, but I'm not really like I don't know the deep history and everything. But I like Spider-Man is like he embodies that 90s cartoon. The new
no doubt. I hope they hurry up. I'm sure they've already started production on the first film, but they got to hurry up and while he's young, get a bunch out.
Well, And what's messed up, I thought he was literally a 15-year-old kid. He's 20. He's 20.
Yeah, well, he can play it, though. He can play it all.
But yeah, like the other guys didn't look like they were teenagers playing them.
No
but
way.
Yeah,
Not at all.
they do that. I want to see 3 movies with this kid looking like a teenager.
Aunt May, she's great.
Oh God, yeah, Marissa Tomei as Aunt May is great, and I just every movie that has Spider-Man in it needs to have Tony Stark in it so that he can hit on Aunt May.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Great, that was great. That was probably the best stuff RDJ had in Civil War was his scenes with.
Listen to you with the acronyms RDJ.
I'm an acronym guy.
All right, for the fans that don't know.
Robert Downey Jr.
All right, thank you. That'd be me listening to you driving, be like, what the heck is he talking about?
Yeah. I kind of always just assume people know I guess not. Right. I guess I shouldn't assume.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't because there's the reason.
What's the saying about assume?
You make an ass out of you and me.
That's right.
One of the things that I love that Stan Lee has said about comic books is like the reason that every comic book kind of like retells like in one page the story of that character is because everyone's comic book is their like that's someone's first comic book.
Right.
And I've treated for 10 years that I've done a podcast, people called me an idiot for always saying, "Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Kev. And here's my co-host, whoever." Everyone's like, "That's dumb." We're 100 episodes in. They know who we are. Yeah, but what about the new listeners?
Totally.
There's a new listener.
And I was just thinking that too. I need to remember that too. And there's a couple of my intro things I kind of need to be aware that, yeah, somebody could just, and when people check out a new show, they're usually just playing your most recent one.
Yeah.
Especially for my kind of show that's episodic, that makes a whole another world there that I have to deal with.
And like, so if someone's checking out this episode today as their first episode, they can totally do that without having to jump around too much. There's maybe a few things that I've dropped that they have to, oh, you know what? I'm going to go back and listen to this episode to get that background knowledge. But like in what you do and other D&D podcasts, like, typically, unless you're a one-shot podcast, you need, for me, like I need to start at episode 1. I can't start. Like when I downloaded obviously the first episode that downloaded was your most recent episode, but like I need to go back.
Oh yeah, you'll get lost. Characters talking about places. You're like, what the heck?
Yeah, like and I guess that's kind of the like if. Maybe a podcast audience in this day and age is smart enough to know that from like Serial, for instance. Like Serial really popularized like the episodic podcast. But my comic book days is like, yeah, you kind of need to start. You need to maybe not for comic books, not episode or issue 1, but you need to start at a point that's not in the middle of its run to like get background knowledge, and that's totally. Like you guys are luckily, like you're still in season 1. So like, it's not a hard thing to go back and listen to I think you're up to episode 13 or 14 now.
Right. Go on.
So so it's easy to go back and listen to, and definitely anyone, as we run out this first hour, if you haven't listened to A Quest for Magic and Steele, do it, but start with episode 1, the pilot episode, because, you'll be lost without it.
Yeah. And you can actually, too, we're on like everything. I've uploaded to everything, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spreaker, like we're everywhere. And just search for Magic and Steele. You can find it. And on our website, too, you can find it. Just magicandsteele.com. Don't forget the last E for entertainment.
I like it. That's good, dude. I love it. And I will say that I think it was your episode. Was it episode 2? It was episode maybe 3 that had like your mixer went or something.
Yeah, the first 3 episodes, and I write that in our show notes a little bit. And it was that when I started it, it's the first time I've ever going back to how we started, the origins of our show. I first time doing a group thing like that with a big mixer. I've had mixers when I DJ'd, but never in a big room and miking everybody. So it was my first time doing that. And then hearing about it and reading about it and studying about it versus live action doing it. So I bought one long strip channel, mic channel. I didn't have a lot of control with it. Didn't like that. Then went out and bought another used one, a Yamaha mixer. Didn't like the way it sounded in the recording. Ended up the third one going out and getting a Behringer, Behringer. Getting a big mixer with like 6-channel mics, a whole bunch of extra junk that I can grow into. And so there's definitely some changes there you can hear.
Yeah, and I want to say it was whatever the last one before the good mixer came into play. Like that's the one where like you just have to kind of work through it because there's and this is just a critique. Not negative at all.
No, go for it.
But I want to say you're the voice that's like loud and everyone else is quiet. So you just have to kind of like, and I'm telling this to people that haven't listened to your show yet, like kind of bear through that episode.
Yep.
Because
real bad.
After that, like everything gets back to normal. And this goes to my rule of like, I have a 3-episode rule when it comes to TV, and I kind of apply it to podcasting as well, is you got to get me hooked in 3 episodes. And then I'm yours for life. And, you guys did it, in that 3rd episode where we're crystal clear. It was I was hooked. I was like, all right, I can listen without having to play. The problem with episode 2, the only problem, content's great. The only problem is like, I have to concentrate on lowering my volume and upping my volume, lowering my volume.
And I'm actually it's really frustrating because I'm kind of an audiophile too. And it really bugs me when I get to the editing process. Yeah. And actually number 6, I don't like either because we ended up being short a mic. I had to use my condenser mic out of my studio and you can hear my voice is real muffled and kind of funky on 6. Whereas 2 is real bad because you can't even hear Amara's my daughter, and she's the DM that runs the game.
Oh, well, okay.
Volume's real low.
Wow. Okay. So this is a family dynamic. This is a family podcast.
We didn't even get into that. Yeah. We're going to have to go back.
All right, super friends. We're going to cut the show right here. I was going to go an extra couple minutes because this interview ended up being about 2.5 hours long. So I wanted to split it up right in half. But the cliffhanger of me finding out that A Quest for Magic and Steele is a family podcast, a family D&D session. It's such a good cliffhanger. It blew my mind when I found out in this interview. And as we discussed it on the prequel episode to this that we aired on Monday with Amara. Hope I got it right this time. Discussing it, we're about to continue discussing it. You're going to hear it. Some things got in the way. This is coming out on Thursday instead of Wednesday, which means I'm going to push off part 2 of our conversation with Dave to Saturday. So that means, you can listen to this at your leisure and listen to part 2 on Saturday. But, and you'll hear the full conversation about how that dynamic happened with the podcast and the tabletop game turning into a family event. And that, as I mentioned before, I think with in episode 26, that was the defining moment for that podcast for me. That is when it went from just like another D&D podcast I was listening to something special. It's little things like that when people do some sort of unique twist to a podcast, or even if it's something in editing or something in just in the process of recording that I pick up on, like it's those things that make your podcast better. And it was simple as dropping the little note that, it's my family playing D&D and recording it like that. As you heard, it hit me in a way, and it really changed the way I looked at that show. And I'm excited for you guys to listen to the rest of our conversation, where we kind of go into that process. We go into some other cool things for like the next hour and a half or so. But that will be out on Saturday, August 13th. For your listening pleasure. I hope you guys are enjoying the week of Steele right here on Everything is Awesome. Later today, and this is one of the main reasons I'm also delaying part 2, is I'm going to be releasing a special podcast. It's going to be our first annual podcast that remembers Robin Williams. So that will be available later this afternoon for your listening pleasure as well. And I'll give apologies on that one as well. But apologies to, and I don't know who I was talking to from Podcast About Nothing, but apologies to them. We were supposed to get together and do this Robin Williams, annual special, and just my schedule got way crazy and I couldn't do it. So we are going to have a Podcast About Nothing on our show for sure. Hopefully he'll want to be on the show after me forgetting to reschedule our Robin Williams special. And this one is just going to be a solo podcast with me, and we'll have, it will improve as time goes on. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyway, thanks for listening and being part of the Week of Steel right here on Everything is Awesome. Make sure you come check out their podcast on magicandsteele.com. They're on Twitter at Empire Steel. They're on Facebook. Just search Steel Empire. They are going to be part of the Philadelphia Podcast Festival, the 4th annual one right here in the great old city of Philadelphia. They will be performing live on Saturday, August 20th at 3 p.m. at Amalgam Comics on Frankfurt in Philly. A small note to that, I mentioned in the beginning of this episode that Party of One would be right before them, and that was an early schedule that I got. That has since changed. Jeff Stormer and the Party of One podcast will be on Friday night, August 19th at 6 p.m. at the very same comic book store. So go check that out if you can. Check out A Quest for Magic and Steele live at the Philadelphia Podcast Fest. For more information on the Philadelphia Podcast Fest, go to phillypodfest.com, and we'll catch you in a couple days right here, only on awesomepodcast.com.